My wife's family betrayed me. Then her mom secretly left me $3.2 million. The call came at 7:43 p.m. on a Thursday, right as I was putting Qley to bed. My 3-year-old was finally settling down after what felt like hours of bedtime stories when my phone buzzed. The number wasn't familiar, but something about the timing made me answer. "Is this Austin Rivera?" The voice was crisp, professional. "Yes, speaking." Qley tugged at my sleeve, wanting another story, but I gently guided her back to bed. "Mr. Rivera, this is Jonathan Walsh from Walsh & Associates. I'm calling about the estate of Helena Blackwood. I believe she was your mother-in-law." My blood went cold. Helena had passed away 2 months ago, and the funeral had been a nightmare. My wife Jenny's family had made it crystal clear that I wasn't really part of their inner circle. Helena's death had brought out the worst in everyone, especially my sister-in-law Rebecca and her husband Tom. "Yes, she was my mother-in-law," I said carefully. "I need to schedule a meeting with you, Mr. Rivera. There are matters concerning Mrs. Blackwood's will that require your immediate attention." I almost laughed. "I think there's been some confusion. I'm sure Helena left everything to her daughters. We weren't particularly close." There was a pause. "Mr. Rivera, I think we absolutely need to meet. Tomorrow, if possible." The next morning, I found myself in a downtown law office that smelled like old books and furniture polish. Jonathan Walsh was younger than his voice had suggested, maybe mid-40s with graying temples and the kind of expensive suit that screamed old money. "Before we begin," he said, sliding a thick envelope across his mahogany desk, "Mrs. Blackwood specifically requested that you read this letter first." My hands trembled slightly as I opened the envelope. Helena's elegant handwriting covered several pages of cream-colored stationery. "My dear Austin, if you're reading this, then Jonathan has finally tracked you down, and I am no longer here to explain things myself. I need you to understand something that I never had the courage to tell you while I was alive. You are the only member of this family who truly understood what it meant to struggle. When Jenny brought you home 6 years ago, I watched how my daughters treated you. Rebecca's snide comments about your blue-collar background, Patricia's condescending advice about bettering yourself. Even my own husband, God rest his soul, made those awful jokes about Jenny marrying down. But I saw something they didn't. I saw a young man who worked 2 jobs to put himself through nursing school. I saw someone who held Jenny's hand through her father's cancer without once complaining about the burden. I saw you take care of Qley when Jenny had her breakdown, never asking for help, never making excuses. Most importantly, I saw you continue to show up to family gatherings even when Rebecca and Tom made it clear you weren't welcome. Even when Patricia's husband Derek made those cruel comments about your family's immigration story. You took it all with grace I never could have managed. What my daughters don't know is that I've been watching all of them very carefully these past few years. Rebecca, who borrowed $50,000 from me last year to save Tom's failing restaurant and never mentioned paying it back. Patricia, who convinced me to invest $75,000 in Derek's guaranteed real estate deal that somehow only benefited his portfolio. They both assume that because I'm old, I'm also stupid. They think my money will solve all their problems. Rebecca has already picked out a new house, counting on her inheritance. Patricia has been telling people she's finally going to start her art gallery. They've been spending money they don't have, making plans for a windfall they're not going to receive. You, Austin, never asked me for anything. Not once in 6 years. When your car broke down and you had to take 3 buses to get to work, you never mentioned it. When Qley needed surgery and I knew you were drowning in medical bills, you politely declined when I offered help. You have dignity, something my daughters seem to have inherited very little of. I'm leaving you everything, Austin. The house, the investments, the savings, all of it. Not because I don't love my daughters, but because I love them enough to hope this will teach them something about earned versus expected. They'll inherit enough to pay off their debts and have a fresh start, but nothing more. Use this money wisely. Give Qley the opportunities she deserves. Show Jenny what real security feels like. And please, don't let my daughters bully you into giving them more than they deserve. You are family, Austin. You always have been. With love and respect, Helena. P.S. The wine collection in the basement is particularly good. Richard and I were saving it for special occasions that never seem to come. Make your own special occasion. I read the letter twice before looking up at Jonathan, who was watching me with interest. How much? I asked quietly. The estate is valued at approximately $3.2 million, he said. The house is worth about $800,000, and the rest is in various investments and savings accounts. Your sisters-in-law each receive $50,000, enough to cover their outstanding debts to Mrs. Blackwood, plus a small additional sum. I leaned back in my chair. Jenny and I had been living paycheck to paycheck since Qley was born. Jenny's mental health struggles after her father's death had meant more therapy bills and less work. We'd been talking about moving to a smaller apartment because we could barely afford rent on our two-bedroom place. There's more, Jonathan continued. Mrs. Blackwood specifically requested that I be present when you inform the family about the will. She wanted a witness, and she wanted to ensure you had legal support when they react. That afternoon, I drove to Rebecca's house with Jonathan following in his own car. The plan was to gather everyone together, Jenny, Rebecca, Patricia, and their husbands. Jenny thought we were just going to discuss Helena's estate division, nothing more. Rebecca lived in a sprawling suburban house that she and Tom had bought the year before, banking on Tom's restaurant taking off. The restaurant was struggling, but they'd been living well beyond their means anyway. New cars, expensive vacations, private school for their twins, all financed with credit cards and the assumption that Mom would eventually bail them out. Patricia was already there when we arrived, having driven up from the city in her brand new BMW. She and Derek had been house hunting in the most expensive neighborhoods, telling anyone who would listen about their upcoming windfall. Jenny answered the door, Qley on her hip. Austin, you didn't tell me you were bringing a lawyer. It seemed appropriate, I said, kissing her cheek. Where is everyone? The whole family was gathered in Rebecca's oversized living room. Rebecca and Tom on their leather sectional, Patricia and Derek in the matching chairs. Jenny settling next to me with Qley playing quietly on the floor. The room reeked of new money and poor decisions. Expensive furniture that didn't quite match, art that looked like it came from hotel clearance sales, a massive TV that dominated one wall. Well, Rebecca said, clasping her hands together, I guess it's time to talk about Mom's will. I have to say, I'm excited to finally put Dad's and Mom's financial stress behind us. Jonathan cleared his throat. Actually, Mrs. Patterson, I'm here specifically regarding your stepfather Austin's inheritance. The room went silent. Qley continued playing with her blocks, oblivious to the tension that had suddenly filled the air. I'm sorry, Patricia said slowly. Did you say Austin's inheritance? Yes, Jonathan replied calmly. I'm here to inform Austin about what he's inherited from Helena Blackwood's estate. Tom leaned forward. Wait, what exactly is Austin inheriting? I mean, we appreciate that Mom wanted to include him, but he's not actually family. Not blood family. Jenny's hand found mine and squeezed. She knew about the comments. The subtle and not-so-subtle ways her family had always made me feel like an outsider. Jonathan opened his briefcase. Mr. Rivera, would you like to share what you learned this morning, or shall I handle this? I stood up, pulling Helena's letter from my jacket pocket. I learned that Helena left me everything. The house, all the investments, the savings accounts. Everything. The silence was deafening. That's impossible, Rebecca whispered. She left me a letter explaining her reasoning, I continued. She was apparently paying attention to how this family treated me over the years. She was also paying attention to how much money you both borrowed from her and never repaid. Patricia stood up abruptly. This is insane. Austin, you can't actually think you deserve Mom's entire estate. You married into this family 6 years ago. We're her daughters. We took care of her. Did you? I asked. Because according to this letter, most of your visits involved asking for money. Rebecca, the $50,000 for Tom's restaurant. Patricia, the $75,000 for Derek's real estate investment. When was the last time either of you visited Helena without needing something? Derek's face was turning red. Now wait just a minute. That real estate deal was legitimate business. Helena was an investor, not a lender. An investor who never saw any returns, Jonathan said mildly. Mrs. Blackwood was very specific about documenting these loans in her records. Rebecca was shaking her head. Mom promised us. She always said the estate would be divided fairly among family. She said we'd never have to worry about money. Maybe she meant Jenny's family, I said, looking at my wife. Qley and me. Maybe that's who she meant when she talked about taking care of family. Jenny was staring at me with wide eyes. Austin, how much money are we talking about? $3.2 million, I said quietly. Qley looked up at the sound of numbers, not understanding but sensing the tension. Jenny picked her up automatically, holding her close. This is completely unfair, Tom said, his voice rising. Austin doesn't know anything about managing that kind of money. He's a nurse, for God's sake. He'll blow through it in 5 years. As opposed to you blowing through it immediately on another failed restaurant, I shot back. Patricia was pacing now. We'll contest the will. This is obviously elder abuse or manipulation. Mom wasn't thinking clearly at the end. Jonathan smiled coldly. Mrs. Blackwood anticipated that possibility. She was evaluated by 2 independent physicians who confirmed her mental competency. She also had the will witnessed by 3 separate parties and video recorded her explanation of her wishes. A contest would be expensive and, ultimately, unsuccessful. What do we get? Rebecca asked, her voice small. Each of you receives $50,000, Jonathan replied. According to Mrs. Blackwood's notes, that should cover your outstanding debts to her, with a small amount left over. $50,000. Patricia shrieked. That's not even enough to cover what we owe on the BMW. Maybe you shouldn't have bought a BMW you couldn't afford, I said. Derek stood up, his face ugly with anger. Listen here, you little. Derek. Jenny's voice was sharp. That's enough. For the first time since I'd known her, Jenny was standing up to her family on my behalf. Austin, Rebecca said, desperation creeping into her voice. You have to see that this isn't right. We're family. We took care of Mom when she was sick. I took care of your father when he was dying, I replied. I held Jenny together when she couldn't function. I never asked Helena for anything, not once. I worked double shifts to pay for Qley's medical bills rather than burden your mother with our problems. That's what you're supposed to do. Tom exploded. That's called being an adult. Then maybe you should try it, I said calmly. Patricia sat down heavily. Austin, please. I know we haven't always been welcoming, but we can change. We can be a real family now. I looked around the room at these people who had spent 6 years making me feel like a charity case, who had made jokes about my background, my job, my family's history, who had borrowed money from Helena and never paid it back, who had made plans for her estate before she was even gone. We are a real family, I said. Jenny, Qley, and I. That's the family Helena wanted to take care of. As Jonathan and I prepared to leave, Rebecca made one last attempt. Austin, you can't really mean to take everything. Think about Qley. Don't you want her to have relationships with her aunts? I paused at the door. The same aunts who've never once offered to babysit? Who forgot her birthday last year? Who make comments about her mixed heritage when they think I'm not listening? Jenny was crying now, finally understanding the full scope of how her family had treated us. I want Qley to have relationships with people who love and respect her, I continued. People who don't see her as less than because of who her father is or where he comes from. 6 months later, we moved into Helena's house. It's a beautiful Victorian in an established neighborhood, with a yard where Qley can play and rooms for the children Jenny and I have started talking about having. We found more than just a house there. Helena had kept photo albums documenting every family gathering, and I could see the pattern I'd never noticed before. In every photo, I was slightly apart from the group, or missing entirely from family shots. But there were also photos Helena had taken secretly of just Jenny, Qley, and me, candid moments where we looked happy and comfortable, like the real family we'd always been. Jenny went back to school to finish her teaching degree, something she'd put on hold after Qley was born. She's happier now, more confident, not constantly worried about money or trying to manage her family's expectations. Qley started at a better preschool, one that focuses on nurturing creativity and curiosity rather than just preparing kids to test well. She loves the big backyard and has already made friends with the neighbor kids. As for Rebecca and Patricia, they've had to make some adjustments. Rebecca and Tom lost their house and moved into a smaller rental. Tom's restaurant finally closed, and he got a job managing someone else's place. Patricia and Derek had to sell the BMW and downsize their lifestyle considerably. They've both called, asking for family meetings to discuss the future, but I've learned to recognize manipulation when I see it. The money has been properly invested, and I've started a small foundation that provides scholarships for nursing students from immigrant families. It seemed like something Helena would have approved of, helping people who understand what it means to work for everything they have. But the best part isn't the financial security, though that's life-changing. The best part is finally understanding my place in this family. Helena saw me for who I really was, not who her daughters thought I should be. She understood that family isn't just about blood or marriage certificates. It's about who shows up, who stays, who loves you through the difficult times. Sometimes Jenny asks if I feel guilty about the money, about how her sisters were left out. But I remember Tom's snide comments about my people. I remember Derek's jokes about welfare families, and how hard Jenny laughed at them. I remember Rebecca telling Qley she was lucky to be pretty, because she might overcome her background. They made their choices long before Helena wrote her will. She just made sure those choices had consequences. Qley will never wonder if she belongs. She'll never feel like she has to apologize for who her father is or where her family came from. She'll grow up knowing that love is shown through actions, not just words, and that real family stands together when things get tough. That's worth more than $3.2 million. Though the $3.2 million certainly doesn't hurt. Date. The morning Jenny told me she was pregnant again, I was sitting in Helena's old study, going through the foundation paperwork. We'd helped 12 students complete their nursing degrees so far, and applications for the next round were pouring in. Each story reminded me of my own struggles, working nights at the hospital while studying during the day, living on instant coffee and determination. Austin. Jenny's voice was soft from the doorway. She was holding a pregnancy test, tears streaming down her face. I dropped the papers and pulled her into my arms. Qley, now 6 and starting first grade, would finally get the sibling she'd been asking for constantly. "Are you happy?" she whispered against my shoulder. "I'm terrified," I admitted. "But yes, incredibly happy. We'd been trying for 2 years." The stress of the inheritance battle, followed by the slow process of rebuilding our relationship with boundaries, had taken its toll. Jenny had needed therapy to work through the guilt and anger about her family's behavior. She'd spent months apologizing for things that weren't her fault, trying to make up for decades of her sister's cruelty. Dr. Martinez, our therapist, had helped us understand that Jenny was also a victim of her family's dysfunction. She'd been raised to believe that keeping the peace was more important than standing up for what was right. She'd learned to minimize problems rather than address them, to apologize for other people's behavior rather than hold them accountable. The pregnancy news came at an interesting time. Rebecca had been calling more frequently lately, wanting to rebuild our relationship now that enough time had passed. She and Tom were doing better financially. They'd managed to buy a small house again, and Tom's new restaurant management job was stable. But I could hear the calculation in her voice when she asked about Qley's school, about our renovations to Helena's house, about our investment portfolio. Patricia had been less subtle. She'd sent a long email about family healing, and how Helena would have wanted us to share the blessings. She mentioned Derek's new business venture several times, how it was guaranteed to triple any investment, and how family should help family achieve their dreams. I'd learned to recognize these overtures for what they were, not genuine attempts at reconciliation, but carefully orchestrated campaigns to access Helena's money through guilt and manipulation. The day we told Qley she was going to be a big sister, she immediately started planning how to teach the baby to play soccer and ride bikes. Her innocence about the family dynamics was something we'd fought hard to preserve. She knew Aunt Rebecca and Aunt Patricia lived far away and didn't visit often, but she didn't know why. She'd never heard the cruel comments or witnessed the years of subtle rejection. "Will the baby look like me?" she asked at dinner, her 6-year-old mind working through the genetics she didn't fully understand. "The baby will look like themselves," Jenny said diplomatically. "Just like you look like yourself. But will they be brown like daddy or white like mommy?" "They might be both like you," I said. "Or they might look completely different. Babies are surprises." Qley considered this seriously. "I hope they're brown like daddy," she declared. "Brown is prettier." Jenny squeezed my hand under the table. This was what Helena had wanted to protect. Qley's confidence in her own skin, her pride in all parts of her heritage, her certainty that she was loved and valued exactly as she was. A week later, Rebecca called with what she clearly thought was wonderful news. "Austin, I heard about the baby. Congratulations. Tom and I were just saying that this is perfect timing." "Perfect timing for what?" "Well, you know we've been wanting to be more involved with Qley, and now with a new baby coming, you'll need so much help. We were thinking we could move closer. Actually, Tom found this amazing house just 10 minutes from you guys. It's a little out of our price range right now, but we thought maybe you could help with the down payment. As a family investment, you know? It would be so wonderful to have the cousins grow up together." I almost laughed at the transparent manipulation. "Rebecca, we don't need you to move closer to help with the baby. Jenny and I have things handled. But Austin, this is what family does. We help each other. And honestly, I think Qley needs more connection with her aunts. She's getting so big, and we've missed so much of her childhood already." "Whose choice was that?" I asked quietly. There was a pause. "I know we've had our differences in the past, but that's exactly why this is so important. We need to move forward, for the children's sake. Rebecca, I'm not financing your move to our neighborhood so you can have access to my family. If you want a relationship with Qley, you can visit her like any other relative. But I'm not funding your housing or Tom's business ventures or anything else." Her tone shifted immediately. "That's incredibly selfish, Austin. You're sitting on millions of dollars that should have been shared with the whole family. Mom must be rolling over in her grave seeing how greedy you've become." "Helena made her choices very deliberately," I said. "She knew exactly who she was leaving her money to and why. If you want to honor her memory, try being the kind of person she would have wanted to reward." I hung up and immediately called Jonathan Walsh. If Rebecca was getting bold enough to ask for house money, I suspected Patricia wouldn't be far behind with her own schemes. Sure enough, Patricia called 2 days later. "Austin, darling, I have the most exciting opportunity to discuss with you. Derek has been selected to participate in this exclusive real estate development project. It's incredibly prestigious. They only choose the most successful investors. The returns are projected to be absolutely phenomenal. Patricia, I'm not interested in any investment opportunities. But this isn't just any investment. This is family helping family reach their full potential. Derek has such a brilliant mind for business, and with the right backing, he could really make something of himself. I know Helena would have wanted to support him." Helena explicitly mentioned Derek's previous, guaranteed real estate deal in her letter to me. She lost $75,000 on his brilliant business mind. Patricia's voice became sharp. "That wasn't Derek's fault. The market conditions changed unexpectedly. This is completely different." "I'm sure it is." "The answer is still no. Austin, you're being incredibly unfair. You have more money than you could ever need. Don't you think there's something morally wrong with hoarding wealth when your family is struggling?" "Are you struggling, Patricia? Because last time I checked, you and Derek both have good jobs and a nice apartment. Wanting more money to speculate on get-rich-quick schemes isn't the same thing as struggling. We're not speculating, we're investing in our future. And yes, we are struggling. Do you have any idea how expensive it is to live in the city? How hard it is to get ahead when you don't have family money to fall back on?" The irony was stunning. Patricia, who had spent years making jokes about my poor family and my lack of advantages, was now complaining about not having family money. "Patricia, for 6 years, you watched me work 2 jobs while going to school. You watched Jenny and me choose between paying rent and buying groceries. You never once offered to help or even acknowledged that we might be struggling. Why should I believe you care about family financial struggles now?" "That was different," she said weakly. "How was it different?" You made your choices. Nobody forced you to have a baby so young, or to marry Jenny before you had a stable career. There it was. The real Patricia, the one who believed that some people deserved help and others deserved judgment. "You're right," I said. "I did make my choices. And Helena made hers. I think we're done here." The calls kept coming over the following months. Sometimes from Rebecca and Patricia directly, sometimes from Tom or Derek, occasionally from family friends who had been recruited to make their case for them. The stories were always variations on the same theme. Austin had more money than he needed, family should help family, Helena would have wanted us to share, it wasn't fair for one person to inherit everything. But the more they called, the more I understood Helena's decision. These weren't people who had fallen on hard times through no fault of their own. These were people who had spent years living beyond their means, making poor choices, and expecting someone else to bail them out. The inheritance hadn't changed their character. It had just revealed it more clearly. Jenny was getting stronger throughout her pregnancy, but the stress of her family's constant manipulation attempts was taking a toll. Dr. Martinez suggested we consider changing our phone numbers or limiting contact entirely. "I feel guilty," Jenny admitted during one session. "They're my sisters. What if something really bad happens and they need help?" "There's a difference between emergency help and enabling bad behavior," Dr. Martinez replied. "If Rebecca broke her leg and couldn't work, would Austin help with medical bills?" "I considered this. Probably. If it was a genuine emergency and not part of some scheme. But if she asked for money to invest in Tom's third restaurant attempt, absolutely not." Jenny nodded slowly. "I think I see the difference. It's about accountability." "Exactly. Helping family through genuine crises is one thing. Funding their poor decisions over and over is another." Qley's 7th birthday party was a turning point. We'd invited Rebecca and Patricia, hoping to give them another chance to build real relationships with their niece. Both families came, bringing elaborate gifts that were clearly meant to impress rather than delight a 7-year-old. Qley was polite but distant with her aunts. At 7, she was old enough to sense their insincerity, the way they asked questions about her school and friends while clearly thinking about something else. The real moment came when Qley was opening presents. She'd gotten art supplies, books, a bike helmet for her new grown-up bike, and various toys from friends and neighbors. Rebecca and Patricia had bought her expensive electronics, an iPad and a gaming system that were clearly meant more for the adults than for Qley. "Wow, these are very grown-up presents," Jenny said diplomatically. "Well, Qley deserves the best," Patricia said, but she was looking at me when she said it. "Some children are lucky to have family who can afford nice things." Qley looked confused by the comment, but the other parents at the party caught the implication immediately. Several of them glanced at me with raised eyebrows. Later, when Qley was playing with the cardboard box that had contained her art supplies instead of the expensive iPad, Rebecca pulled me aside. "Austin, I need to talk to you about something important. Tom's been offered a chance to buy into a restaurant franchise. It's a sure thing. These places are making money hand over fist. But we need to move fast, and we're just short on the investment capital." "Rebecca, no. You didn't let me finish explaining." "I don't need to hear the explanation. The answer is no. But this could change everything for us. Tom could finally be a real success instead of just managing other people's restaurants. We could pay you back with interest, like you paid back the $50,000 Helena loaned you for the last restaurant." Her face flushed. "That was different. That restaurant failed because of the location, not because of anything Tom did wrong. And this new restaurant will fail because of something else beyond Tom's control. Rebecca, I've watched this pattern for years. Tom's always one deal away from being successful, one opportunity away from making it big. But somehow it never works out, and somehow it's never his fault. You're being incredibly unfair. Tom works hard. Tom works hard at chasing get-rich-quick schemes instead of building actual skills or experience. He's had 6 different restaurant jobs in the time I've known him, and he's never lasted more than 2 years at any of them because he always thinks he knows better than his employers." Rebecca's mask of politeness finally slipped completely. "Fine. Be selfish. Keep all of Mom's money to yourself while your family struggles. But don't expect us to keep pretending this is okay. Don't expect us to keep playing happy family when you're acting like you're better than us." "I don't think I'm better than you, Rebecca. I think I'm different from you." I think Helena recognized that difference, and I think that's why she made the choices she made. Patricia had apparently been listening from around the corner, because she appeared immediately. "What choices?" "Austin," Mom was old and confused at the end. She wasn't thinking clearly about the long-term consequences of what she was doing. "She was thinking very clearly," I replied. "She was thinking about who had earned her trust and respect over the years, and who had just taken from her without giving anything back." "We gave her our love and attention," Patricia protested. "You gave her visits when you needed money and phone calls when you wanted something. When did you last call Helena just to see how she was doing? When did you last visit without asking for a favor or a loan?" Neither of them could answer. "I called her every Sunday for 6 years," I continued. Even when I was working double shifts, even when Qley was sick, even when you made it clear I wasn't welcome at family gatherings. I brought Qley to see her great-grandmother every month, because I thought it was important for both of them. I never asked her for anything, not even when we were struggling to pay Qley's medical bills. You were sucking up, Rebecca said bitterly. You were manipulating an old woman. I was being a decent human being. There's a difference. They left shortly after that, making a big show of saying goodbye to Qley and promising to see her soon, but I could tell from Qley's polite but unenthusiastic responses that she wasn't particularly invested in those promises. After everyone had gone home and Qley was in bed, Jenny and I sat in Helena's garden talking about the day. I'm sorry, Jenny said. They're never going to change, are they? Probably not. But that's not your fault, and it's not your responsibility to fix them. I keep thinking about what our baby will grow up knowing about my family. Qley barely remembers when they were more involved, but this baby will only know them as the aunts who occasionally visit and always want something. Maybe that's better, I said. Maybe it's better for both kids to see us set boundaries, to see that we don't tolerate people who treat us poorly just because they're family. Jenny rested her hand on her growing belly. I want our children to know their worth. I want them to understand that love is shown through actions, not just words. They will, I promised. They'll learn it by watching how we treat them and each other. The baby came on a snowy February morning after 18 hours of labor that left us all exhausted but euphoric. David Austin Rivera, named for both our fathers, because even though my relationship with Jenny's family was complicated, I wanted our son to understand his connection to all parts of his heritage. Qley was instantly besotted with her baby brother, insisting on helping with everything from diaper changes to bottle feeding. She sang to him constantly, a mixture of lullabies and pop songs that made him stop crying and stare at her with wide, serious eyes. Rebecca and Patricia both sent gifts and cards, but neither visited the hospital. Their cards contained the usual platitudes about family and new beginnings, but also subtle hints about college funds and investment opportunities. Even the birth of their nephew couldn't prevent them from seeing dollar signs. Helena's house proved perfect for a family with 2 children. David had his own nursery, but Qley had claimed the big bedroom at the end of the hall for herself, declaring it was perfect for a big sister. Jenny and I took the master bedroom with its view of the garden where Helena had spent so many peaceful hours. In the basement, I'd found Helena's wine collection, dozens of bottles she and her husband had collected over the years but never found the right occasion to open. We opened a bottle of champagne the night we brought David home, toasting Helena's memory and the family she'd helped us build. But the real treasure was still the truth. Qley would grow up knowing she was valued and loved. David would never wonder if he belonged. They would both understand that family isn't about obligation or guilt or financial expectations. It's about choosing to show up for each other, day after day, through good times and bad. Sometimes I still wonder what might have been different if Rebecca and Patricia had made different choices over the years. If they'd welcomed me as a brother instead of tolerating me as an outsider. If they'd treated Jenny as a sister instead of as someone who could be manipulated. If they'd focused on building relationships instead of building expectations. But Helena understood something that I'm still learning. You can't save people from the consequences of their own choices. You can love them, you can offer them opportunities to do better, but you can't force them to take those opportunities. At some point, you have to let people be who they've chosen to be. Qley and David will learn that lesson too, but hopefully in gentler ways than I did. They'll learn to set boundaries, to recognize manipulation, to value people based on their actions rather than their promises. They'll also learn generosity and compassion, but the kind that comes from strength rather than guilt. That balance, between protecting what matters and staying open to genuine connection, might be the most valuable thing Helena left us. More valuable than the money, more valuable than the house, more valuable even than the truth about who really cared. Though the money, the house, and the truth certainly don't hurt either.